स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकन्नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वदी साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तन्नमामि। यस्यान्तरनादिमध्यं न हि करचरणं नामगोत्रन्न सूत्रं नो जातिर्नैव वर्णं न भवति पुरुषो नो नपुंसो न च स्त्री नाकारो निर्विकारो न जननमरणं नास्ति पुण्यं न पापं नो तत्त्वं तत्त्वमेकं सहजसमरसं सद्गुरुं तन्नमामि। चिन्मयो नाम रूपस्य आनन्दो वै स्वभावतः वेदगीता समुद्धर्ता ज्ञानयज्ञव्रते स्थितः चिन्मयं जीवनं यस्य स्मरणं यस्य चेतना ज्ञानदानं धृतिर्यस्य तस्य पादौ भजाम्यहम् समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् अजमपि जनियोगं प्रापदैश्वर्ययोगात् अगति च गतिमत्तां प्रापदेकं ह्यनेकं विविधविषयधर्मग्राहिमुग्धे क्षणानां प्रणतभयविहन्तृ ब्रह्म यत्तन्नतोऽस्मि अतीतः पन्थानं तव च महिमा वाङ्मनसयोः अतद्व्यावृत्यायं चकितमभिदत्ते श्रुतिरपि सकस्य स्तोतव्यः कतिविधगुणः कस्य विषयः पदेत्वर्वाचीने पतति न मनः कस्य न वचः। I will read the first Brahmana, first mantra of the sixth query. I just started last time. अथ हैनं सुकेशा भारद्वाजः पप्रच्छ भगवन् हिरण्यनाभः कौसल्यो राजपुत्रः मामुपेत्यैतं प्रश्नम् अपृच्छत् षोडशकलं भरद्वाज पुरुषं वेत्थ तमहं कुमारमब्रुवम् नाहमिमं वेद यद्यहमिममवेदिषं कथं तेन वक्ष्यामिति समूलो वा एषः परिशुष्यति यो नृतम् अभिवदति तस्मान्नार्हाम्यनृतं वक्तुं ततूष्णीं रथमारुह्य प्रव्राज तं त्वा पृच्छामि क्वासौ पुरुष इति। Welcome you all with salutations to this Vichara Sadhana Satsang, where we are discussing Prashnopanishad and we are at the last and sixth query. We just started going through the introduction and the first mantra, which shapes the sixth question. The question in simple is, who is this Purusha with 16 parts? Where is he located? So that was a question, but just on a question itself to give a discourse is really something fantastic. Now, once the question has been explained, there is nothing remain to be commented upon. But here we have in the beginning only a story of why and wherefore of the questioning of by this Bharadwaj. So this story, Genesis, what we can say to the question, this narration itself has been taken up by Swamiji, and he has here and there, now and then, he has given some comments which are suggestive and uh, quite a good material for our reflection. So that way we have started on this commentary fourth para, which is loaded with good statements, and there we have seen, we have already discussed the statement related to in the fourth paragraph. The first statement, important, irresistible is the charm of art to those who have perfected it in themselves. This was a great statement. It's a charm of art. When you go to college, we have earlier only two alternatives, science or arts, and third one was commerce. So if science is related to our intellectual development, the arts is concerned with our mind. And here, to cultivate this art, to master, who are master in it, to master in the art themselves, that means they have taken up the very mind and develop it to absorb various kinds of arts. There's a art of expression of our ideas. There's an art of experience at the level of mind. And likewise, we have seen last time also some of the titles of Swamiji's books are also starting with the art. The art of living, the art of man making, the art of contemplation. So the art of contemplation is really to begin with. He takes it up seriously and goes up to the end of this commentary, the contemplative exercise. It is an art, and how it is blended with the discriminative faculty of the intellect, and how it is keen on experiencing the gains or achievements of the intellect. Whatever are the gains or achievements of the intellect for the self rediscovery, the same is being experienced by the mind. And it is the mind's art to itself be quiet and merge with the deity of its worship, so that it doesn't have its own raising hood or asserting anything. But in all devotion, that mind is closely following the steps of discriminative discovery through discriminative analysis. So whatever is the gains by the discriminative intellect in terms of its discovery of the self, the same is closely followed in devotion by the mind, so that the mind can experience it. Therefore, the intellectual knowledge and the experience, its experience through mind, its realization through mind are the two things. And it is finally it is the mind which is helping us to realize what we have intellectually understood. But this, if this is the case, then these are the masters who have themselves perfected in this art, the charm of the art, to those who are irresistible, in a sense that though the disciple has casually told him the story, we could see so many significances. We are not yet further, so as to say, fathomed the further depths of the mere statement by the disciple that one of the good disciple, a king, a prince, a patron, etc. for the ashram, he came and he asked me, and I could not answer that because I didn't know that. Therefore, I am asking you this question. But this kind of expressing one's ignorance has a great significance at various levels. As a student, when he appreciates his ignorance, when he recognizes his ignorance, that is the first step of learning. The first step of learning is acceptance that I have ignorance at present. So, to recognize and accept the ignorance, our ignorance, is the first step of our learning. And if we are aware of the ills of ignorance that we have to suffer due to ignorance, then the desire to know is fanned up. It is not just the, as we first said, that it is the first step of learning, or one who knows that he doesn't know is a simpleton and he is qualified for learning. This is only the first immediate observation. But when he takes it seriously to end the miseries and sufferings due to ignorance, then his desire to know, jitnyasa, which grows. This developing the jitnyasa to its intensity is also one of the very important factors. So it started with ignorance, recognition of ignorance, qualifying for learning, and then fanning up his desire to know in details and depth. So this is jitnyasa. So likewise it goes there, and we can see the height of it is the one who sees the ignorance is a jnani. It goes to that level. If I am able to see the ignorance, see avidya, then I have the true knowledge. That's the indication of knowledge. If I have knowledge, then it means that I have known the ignorance. To know the ignorance is totally a different thing. We are at present under the influence of ignorance. We don't know what is ignorance. We only by effect we are reasoning it to a cause of avidya. At present, we don't know anything about avidya. So we may be defining it this way, that way, with logic and with etymology and all that, na vidyamana, etc. But as such, we are also not fully aware of it. Now, in our ordinary parlance, it's also a great observation that as I can see the light, I can see the darkness also. Now, to be able to see the darkness, it must strike me that darkness must have been illumined so that I am conscious of the darkness. I say here is this area is having darkness and beyond this is light. So when I see this, it is clear that I can see darkness as well as light. Now, in what light I see the darkness? That is the inquiry. So, if I'm able to become that light who sees the darkness, then I have got the knowledge of the self. I become the self. So, the knowledge of the self is, can say, is indicated by the characteristic of knowing the ignorance. One who knows the ignorance is a man of self-knowledge. So this is a great discovery. Now see where we started. We started that a person, a student who acknowledges his ignorance is a simpleton, he is a good student, he is a good student, he is qualified for learning, and acknowledgement of one's ignorance is the first step of learning. This is our beginning of reflection. Then we saw that the more we come to know that we are suffering due to our self ignorance, the more there will be desire to know, to end the ignorance. So, this acquiring of this self knowledge, you require to fan up the desire to know, which is otherwise called as jidnyasa, an intense desire to know. It is not just a curiosity, please. I'm curious about this, I'm curious about that. It is not so. Jijnasa is a strong desire to know, for which I am prepared to compromise for anything less than that. I am not prepared to compromise. I am concerned with this desire to know and how to fulfill that desire. So my pursuit of knowledge will indicate that anything else is of less or no importance except this knowledge. When it comes to that intensity, then one gains the knowledge. And the indication that he has got the knowledge is that he sees the ignorance clearly. Meaning, how the ignorance plays the role, how the ignorance plays the part in the life of an individual, a jiva, and how he makes a fool of him of mistaking the object as the subject, the body as the self, and all that. And there afterwards, with his deluded mind, how he goes about and sees the something which is apparent as real. So the effects, avidya, we are not able to spot out that this is avidya, but we are inferring. It is an inference by seeing the effects. By seeing the effects, we are inferring the cause that it must be due to avidya. Now, for instance, in our own locality and in the building in which we are put up, someone is wandering on our street by lane and looking here, looking there, looking at this building, that building. We'll come to know that he is a stranger to this locality and we'll ask him, what do you want? So, the way he behaves is the effect. Effect of what? He doesn't know something that is searching. So then we ask him, what do you want? Where you want to go? So by seeing the effects, what are the effects? The world is real. I am the body. The world is real. And I can fetch happiness from the world. By interacting with the world, I can fetch the happiness. This idea, when Jnani sees a person struggling for this, he can clearly see that it is his self-ignorance that prompts him to do so. When he himself is of the nature of endless bliss, he is searching for happiness outside. Itself means that he is not aware of his true nature. He doesn't know his true nature. So this idea will slowly is developed into that fact where if a person can see ignorance, he has reached the knowledge, the portals of knowledge. So this is, at present, we do not know what avidya is, but we are facing or suffering the effects or consequences of the avidya's presence. And therefore, we are inferring that we must be unaware of our true nature. Because the Shastras are telling that I am of the nature of Satchidananda, which means the eternal existence, infinite knowledge, and endless joy. If that is my nature, I should experience it. Why I am not experiencing it? You see, this is how an a dramatic situation is not created, not written by the Rishi, but he has managed to see that he exploits this dramatic situation created by a simpleton student who asked a question that once upon a time it happened that I was in my ashram taking lessons or conducting the lesson, discourses or satsang, and the that person, the prince, visited the satsanga, and at the end he asked me this question, but I didn't know. So I told him I didn't know this. So he could not believe. But then I have to tell him, because how can I tell him otherwise? I'm not knowing and saying that I know, or knowing and saying that I don't know. That kind of thing I could not do. That shows that he is true to himself. If he doesn't know, he says he doesn't know. As even Arjuna in Gita, when he was confused, he didn't know what to do, what is his duty. He told his friend, Lord Krishna, that see, I am at this moment confused. Dharma sammuda chetaha. I am confused as regarding my duty. What should I do? Whether I should fight the war or give up the war? So, one who is true to his internal status, whether of knowledge or of ignorance or of confusion, then who is very true to that and is very straightforward about it in expressing it to the concerned person, not everywhere unnecessarily, but to his friend, philosopher and guide, very close. He said, now, my dear friend, I am confused at this moment. I don't know what to do now, what to decide. I do not know. So, this kind of straightforwardness is otherwise called as rujuta in Sanskrit. Ruju is straight. Opposite to ruju is crooked, that is kutila. Kutila is crooked. Ruju is straight, like straight path, highways, and like crooked path of the village. So this kind of thing, a difference. So Rujutvat Arjuna. The term Arjuna comes from the word Ruju. Rujutvat Arjuna. Arjuna was straightforward person, and he never used to hide anything from his friend. He would express it whatever is in his mind. This is most important. This is called straightforwardness. And the great people are characterized by this. Chitte vakye kriyayansha sadhunam ekarupata. Whatever is in their mind appears in the speech and is reflected in their actions. Chitte vakye kriyayansha sadhunam ekarupata. They are called straightforward. And the others in the name of diplomacy, manasyekam, vachasyekam, kriyasyekam. They have something in their mind which they will never reveal, and they will say something else and do something still different. Therefore, one is not able to judge what is his intention. So such people are called as crooked people, though they call themselves as diplomatic. It is no diplomacy. It's not everywhere to be observed. So this is the difference between Ruju and Kutila. So here, this simplicity is one of the very great virtue on the part of student. Straightforwardness is also a good quality on the part of student. And he said that he doesn't know because he was ignorant about it. So appreciating from this to the level of Jnani who sees the ignorance, to that level we can go, level up our kind of reflection on this particular dramatic situation where student just expresses how he comes to ask this question to his teacher here, people ask, he, and he gives the genesis of that. So this genesis appears like a dramatic situation. First we thought that it's a talkative student, unnecessary wasting his time. He should be precise in his question. Who is that person? Who is that Purusha with 16 kalas? He should ask that question instead of this simple questioning. He gave the genesis and all that is too much talkative. It is not so. Shruti are the recordings of Rishi's experiences, self-experiences. Therefore, when they write like this, the student does this, etc., they have different ideas behind it. So it is not just a dramatic, it is not the talkative sense of the student, but it has very many suggestions in our reflection. So Swamiji has, in a commentary on a question itself, not yet answered. On answer, there will be a commentary. But even in the question itself, is finding out areas and giving us the directives for reflection. So here we saw the first thing in the fourth paragraph. That was a very important statement. Irresistible is the charm of art to those who have perfected it in themselves. In between, there is a description that this is not possible for a man of perfection. But why? Because man of perfection is one whose heart is dancing in unison with the rhythm of the unity in diversity. This is always declared, often quoted. The speciality of Indian culture is to discover, seek and discover the unity in diversity. So unity in diversity is another point given for us to reflection. So diversity in names and forms, variety in names and forms, multiplicity in names and forms. In spite of all this, one who is able to see one consciousness as unique one who is pervading in and through all the forms. If one can able to see that, if one is able to see that, then definitely that is the vision of reality that is expected from a cultured person, more so of the Indian culture. So this Bharatiya culture has got this special characteristic to appreciate the unity in diversity. And this aspect is also referred to that these masters have this art of visualizing the reality in the apparent names and forms. This is just the introductory reflections, and the main content is still different. And even in the introductory part, the beauty of Swamiji's commentary is whether it is an introduction or a commentary on the text proper. His attempt is through his contemplation, he always hits the top or tends to hit the top. He doesn't remain only to explain the related portion, but he takes it as a link how we can reach step by step to the highest. And here it is that finally he has taken what you do not know, you acknowledge, you are qualified to walk the path of knowledge. You fan up the desire to know, jnana, and it is only the jnanasu who can become jnani. And the jnani is one who can seize the ignorance. See in turn how he comes back, how it can be fall back to our original start of ignorance. So these masters have explored and exploited all possibilities of higher contemplation in an ordinary, simple looking statement. What the student telling the genesis of its question. This is a simple thing, but they have seen even in that the great significance. Now, that is, this is the second sentence, that the whole heart is dancing in unison with the rhythm of unity in diversity. So the rhythm of the unity itself is a word for reflection. That consciousness is not same everywhere. Consciousness is like inertia and existence in the inert things, insentient things, and it is subconscious to birds and animals. It is expressed as conscious in the human mind, and it is a super conscious manifest in the yogi. You see now the same consciousness, rhythm, the mind has its own vibrations of tamasic, rajasic, or sattvic. Accordingly, the consciousness manifests. It manifests either in inactivity, lethargy, indolence, if it is tamasic, because according to the medium, the energy will reflect or manifest. So, in the tamas, medium of tamas, it will only manifest as inertia, inactivity, etc. In the rajas, it will manifest as dynamic activity. In the sattva, it will manifest as the creative ideas, thoughts. So likewise, according to the rhythm of the upadhi, the consciousness will sing with the tune of that upadhi and manifest. Final thing is that it is the reality that ever exists. In all the apparent forms, it is the consciousness that rules over. Now, instead of saying it rules over the forms, it is here said that it dances in tune with the rhythm of unity in diversity. So, rhythm of unity is rhythm of consciousness, and how it manifests in diversity. Diversity is of living and non-living. Among the living, it is again like plants, then animals, and man. So accordingly, it will manifest. And in Superman or Yogi, a man of achievement, it will manifest in full measure. So this idea is given in this second statement. This is another statement, important statement. The third statement in the same paragraph, fourth is, thus we find, thus when you say summarizing the whole idea in this paragraph, thus we find that even the casual thoughts of a perfected master have a scriptural style of their own, though he is unconscious of it. Saint Tukaram Maharaj has said it. Sahaja bolane hita upadesha. Sahaja, a casual talk. They don't sit there to give a discourse. In their normal conversation with any person, what they casually talk becomes a scriptural truth. Sahaja bolane hita upadesha. For the seeker, for the ardent student, he who is in the company of a saint, he will see that his every activity speaks of that reality that he has realized. Every expression of speech, in speech, it will reflect that. So here it is referred that a casual talk in our normal conversation, it is not on any particular subject, but dealing with only on in the transactional reality, whatever we are interacting, in that said, whatever he has casually said, if the listener, student, if he takes it to his heart and reflect upon that, it has a capacity to stand at par with scriptural statements. And the construction, etc., all Swamiji has appraised there in this. So the similarly, and therefore he has referred to all this Quran, Gita, Upanishad, and the words of Buddha, declaration of Ramakrishna, and all that. They are not sat there to give the discourses, but whatever they have casual saying itself has become a very thoughtful idea, which, when reflected upon, will lead the seekers to the reality. It has the capacity of that. So this idea is given. This is the third statement in the fourth paragraph. And then we can see one more statement on page 173. 173, the third line from the top. When the mind is divinely composed and is resting in God consciousness, words gain a clear ring of sincerity and the construction gains the brilliance of its own. The secret how and a saint in his casual talks gives idea, guidance, direction for reflection so that the person can reach towards the reality. The reason is that all these people, the masterminds, they have their mind established in God consciousness. Now, this is another term. Earlier we saw Chetas, then we saw extremely Sattvic, etc. A pure Sattva, a Prakriti is of two types, Sattva Pradhana, Tama Pradhana. So the Sattvic dominated, Sattva dominated Prakriti is essentially God principle. This chart in Kindle Life will clear to us the rise and fall of man is the name of the chart, and in that we will find on left side it is declared it is the type of Prakriti. One is Sattva Guna Pradhana, another is Tamo Guna Pradhana Prakriti, in which this Sattva Guna Pradhana has two further branching out. One is pure Sattva, another is impure Sattva. So the pure Sattva stands for God principle. That is God consciousness. That is the consciousness manifest in Sattva medium. So in Sattva Guna Pradhana Prakriti, the unmanifest God manifests. And in this God consciousness, one whose mind is established in that God consciousness is a mastermind, is a saint, and his casual saying will lead the aspirant towards the reality. So the slowly the reason for that is also given. First it is said that a casual glance through quotation, etc., will tell us that they have just a casual thought of a perfected master, but that leads the student to reality. And the reason for this is because the mind of this master is established in God consciousness. That is, his mind is extremely pure, free from negativity. In such a case, such a man, even passing a casual comment on anything, will have a depth of great significance for the one who wants to learn from the master. So, is every casual expression, it is not that you ignore all other things and whenever he sits for discourse, then you are very serious about it. It is not so. That is why our Gurukula system was The main intention was for the student to be in the company of a teacher, so that it is for the first year, nothing is taught to the student. He remains in the ashram and he only attends to whatever Guru tells him to do. So he may ask him to tend the cattle, take them for grazing, etc. Or he may tell them to clean the premises. He may tell various activities, and he will observe how much he is disciplined, how much he is obedient. And thus, for an year or so, he will not be taught anything. Like in this also, Prashnopanishad, we saw that when they came, 6 students came with a great desire to know. They were told, you remain here in the ashram for 1 year, practicing what? Tapas, tapasa, brahmacharyena, shraddhaya. So these practice all these three, and then we will see if we can answer your question. He is not giving any guarantee. So it is up to student whether they are really concerned about it. Therefore, they remain. And likewise, this is the special characteristic of Gurukula system of education, wherein the students are exposed to the teacher's day-to-day life. It is not that he will come at a appointed time and give lecture and go away, and then you don't see what he is doing in the rest of the time. The teachers are so great, sattvic in their disposition, that in all their day-to-day activities, one can learn a lot from their actions, for their casual talks, and of course from their teaching. So this kind of association with a teacher to be at his own residence in his own ashram was a speciality by which you can observe, and to such a keen observer student who wants to learn, he will learn even from the casual talks of the master. Not necessarily that he should wait for his time for lessons, etc. So that was the I think last statement almost in this paragraph. So the statement says, all these writings of Aurobindo, etc., songs of Meera will clearly show that when the mind is divinely composed and is resting in God consciousness, the words gain a clear ring of sincerity and the construction gains a brilliance of its own. The brilliance indicates the manifestation of consciousness. So consciousness is manifest in their thoughts, in their words, and in their deeds. So one who is perfectly aligned in his thoughts, words, and deeds, chitte vakye kriyayansha sadhunam ekarupata. There is a perfect alignment. What he thinks, he talks. What he talks, he means it and demonstrates in his own action. As Ramdas Swami says, Adi Kele Maga Sangitale. First, he himself did it, and then he instructs others in that path. So likewise here we can see that it is the reason for all this casual talk becoming the great lesson is that their mind is established in God consciousness. Otherwise, the mind which is extremely sattvic, free from negativity, is the condition called as God consciousness. So the mind established in that, then all this is possible. So therefore now when the Rishi is describing so much about the 6 student, Bharadwaja's question and his genesis, etc., is incorporated in the Upanishad. The Rishi is recording his experiences. So in recording these details also, he is suggesting something. He is capitalizing on that dramatic situation. He has not written the drama, nor he meant for it, but if it happens like that, then he can capitalize and explore or exploit all these dramatic situation for spiritual purpose, whereby the students can learn more. That was the fourth paragraph. And Now we go to the next paragraph, the fifth one. When the Rajkumar, that is prince, hears Sukesha confessing his ignorance of the Purusha with 16 kalas, the prince refuses to believe literally and insists upon getting an explanation from the ascetic. Sukesha continues to argue for establishing his own ignorance and says, if I know him, why should I not tell you? With this, prince not willing to accept it, and so the ascetic was compelled to continue his self-defense. He who tells that which is not true gets destroyed in the world of finitude as well as in the realm of the infinite. How truthfulness is helpful in the material world has already been discussed. Now here it is the point is that truthfulness is also required for the discovery of truth. And this is an introduction to the next paragraph. The last statement is an introduction to the next paragraph. But in between, this Genesis is detailed out. Why he kept silent? Actually, when he argued lastly, these are the, in the wording in the text, you can see, he says, Tamaham Kumaram Abruvan, I told that prince, Naham Idam Veda, I don't know this. What is that? The Purusha with 16 kalas. Na aham imam Veda. Yadi aham, this is a Sandhi rules, so it's a long big word. Yadyaham imam avedisham is a compound sentence of, the collection of very many words. Yadi aham imam avedisham, if I were to know this, kathante na vakshyami iti, why should I not tell you? If I know the truth, why should I not tell you? I don't know, that is why I can't tell you. So this, then still he keeps quiet. The prince does not show any response. Therefore he further argues. He says, he quotes the scriptures, Samulo va esha parishushati yo anritam. The one who talks lie, he dries like a tree who dries root and the stem and the branch. It dries. And we have seen how the trees dies and they get dried up. Now all the water resources are there, but their life is over. So similarly here, one who speaks a lie, he dries in a sense, thereafterward he is disqualified for any merits from the world, either here, Ihaloka, or hereinafter, Paraloka. Whatever are the gains and merits, he is forfeited because he talked lie. He knew it and he did not reveal that he knew it. He said he did not know. Or he did not know it and acted as if he knows it. Either way, it is talking a lie. You don't know and you act as if you are a wise man, but actually you are otherwise man, a fool. So here it is, either way, you know and you don't, you say you don't know. You don't know and you say you know. Either way, when you speak the truth, you are disqualified and you forfeit all the benefits that you can gain by putting forth efforts either in this world or the world hereinafter. So in both the cases, Ihaloka, Paraloka, in both the cases you won't get any merits. So thereafterwards you are disqualified for any further for spirituality. This is what he quotes about it. Samulaha eva va eshaha parishushati yaha anrutam. yaha anrutam abhivadati, who says the untruth or false. Tasmat na arhami anrutam. Therefore, it is not proper for me to speak. And I am not the fool to talk a lie and forfeit all my benefits and merits of this world and the other world. He says so. When he says so, the prince remains silent because he felt ashamed of that he talked too much with his teacher, and he left the scene and went away with his car. So that was the description and genesis. So this was just described in this fifth paragraph. And in that, the genesis is only have some details about it, which are not revealed in the text proper, but we can see by the statements made there. First, he says he didn't know, and the student showed that he did not accept that he can be ignorant about it. He is being a great acharya of the ashram, and if he says he doesn't know, he can't believe that. Then he says, why should I not tell you if I know a thing? You are a good disciple, you are a good student, and I must tell you if I know it, but I don't know it. Still, he won't agree. Meaning, he indicated that he does not believe what he's saying. Then he says, it is said that one who talks lie, all his merits are forfeited related to this world or the other world. So, therefore, I am not a fool to talk lie to you and lose all my merits and benefits. Therefore, when he came to this last defense that I am not a fool to talk a lie, he felt ashamed. The student felt ashamed and he left the scene from that. So, whole thing is described in the fifth paragraph. Now, what is special for us to think over or reflect upon is a concluding statement in the fifth paragraph. It's a big statement, last statement. He who tells that which is not true gets destroyed in the world of finitude, that is this world, Ihaloka, as well as in the realm of the infinite, that is the higher worlds, higher lokas, as we have said. How truthfulness is helpful, this is the last statement. How truthfulness is helpful in the material world has already been discussed. Therefore, he will not talk how the truthfulness will not work in the material world. Now it seems that his concern is how it will not work in the spiritual realm as well. So that is his concern. Now, he says it's already discussed. Therefore, we may go to unfoldment portions wherein the three values of life are discussed. Three values of life to be lived at three levels of our personality. Anybody remembers?
Brahmacharya, Satya and Ahimsa.
Ahimsa.
Yes, correct. So brahmacharya, a life of self-restraint and self-discipline at the physical level, brahmacharya. It's not just not getting married. That is a bachelor. That is not at all, it's only indicative, but not really, may not be really correct. But the real thing is, one, it is not an abstinence or abstaining oneself from the sex. That is called brahmachari. It is not so. Even Lokmanya Tilak is certified as brahmachari by Swami Vivekananda. When he observed him, his daily life, when he met at Pune, and he observed his restrained and controlled living, then he said, if I can I can live like you, I am also prepared to get married. This is the certificate that Lokmanya Tilak has got. So it is not that you don't just get married or you don't have any sex and therefore you are called brahmachari. It is not, it is the indulgence, that is what is discouraged, controlled enjoyments or pleasures through all the senses with limits, thus far and no farther. One who is able to do that within limit is a brahmachari. This is a more better or more realistic definition. It is not just abstinence of sex or just being unmarried. It doesn't mean anything necessarily. But if he had a life of self-restraint, Atma Sanyama, if this value is lived, it is Brahmacharya at a physical level. That means regarding all his senses of perception and action, he has rationing. How much to see, how much to listen, how much to work. Everything has a limit. So there is a time, as Jesus says, there is a time for work, there is a time for rest. It's not that all 12 hours, 14 hours, 20 hours, you keep on working, slogging like a bull. But it is a time for work, a time for rest. This is a controlled one. So if you may compensate. On one day, if you have a sumptuous meal, have a little more, then avoid the supper. You must balance it properly. So this kind of idea of self-control is more realistic, and it is a discipline or a value to be lived at physical level. Similarly, at the mental level, ahimsa is the value. It is not necessarily physical ahimsa. If you say physical ahimsa is ahimsa, their surgeons cannot operate the patient because he has to apply the knife, he has to cut the body, and that kind of ahimsa will not be acceptable. So therefore, ahimsa is not the value to be physically lived, but it is to be lived at the mental level. How it is to be lived at the mental level? Not to think ill of others at any time. Ideal is not even in the dream, but forget about the dream. Immediately we may not have that much control over our thoughts. But one who does not think ill of others is truly a man of non-injury. Because once you have thought of ill of others, you have already committed. You need not really take an action for that. Actions are only the regularizing of your thought. So whether you conduct the action or not, the very thought you have of hatred, of thinking ill of others, itself means you have committed an injury to others. So this is a great value to be lived at mental level. Brahmacharya, ahimsa. And now the point under discussion here is satyam, which is truthfulness, which is intellectual honesty. Whatever you know at the intellectual level and have accepted as true, you are convinced of that, then not to compromise this understanding and conviction at the level of behavior and action is called Satyam. Satyam is not the truth or reality. Here, Satyam as a value is to be intellectually honest. This is intellectual honesty in which you will not compromise under any circumstances. You will not compromise what you have held so far as correct, because then the mind will tend to compromise. Intellectually all right, but practically not possible. Generally the government declaration is like that. If it cannot argue against that, you will say in principle it is accepted. Now regarding the details and particulars, we'll have to work out. We'll see how feasible it is and all that. Likewise, it is not acceptable. Whatever is true must be executed, must be lived up to that, without compromising it at the level of mind with executive, and at the level of body, which expresses as action. So at the level of behavior and action, not to compromise whatever we have understood at the intellectual level as true and correct and have a full conviction regarding that is the value of Satyam. So what this is value of Satyam, we have to live in this world. It's called a man of integrity, and the man of value is welcome, befriended, and invited by all. Everybody wants that. Only very seldom we come across such a person who does not compromise. He has got good ideas, which are also true, all right, but in his actual behavior and action, he seems to compromise all that. So, whatever we say, we should mean it in our own life. So, this kind of thing, Puranatli Vangi Puranat, this is saying because that preacher in the temple, he gives big talks on Puranas, and in Puranas there are certain disciplines to be observed, not to eat garlics and onion and all that, various disciplines are introduced. So when he comes back, he wants the meals which will not be in accordance with what the Puranas have said. Then he will say whatever he said there is only in that, only not to be literally followed. So he said, you better arrange for that. So he'll ask his wife to cook that which is prohibited in certain periods by the Puranas or the scriptures. So these such injunctions which are only to be quoted and not to be meant really in our own life is actually dishonesty to ourselves. And thereby we miss a lot. Such a person is destroyed. Only now, Swamiji says that this truthfulness related to the material world has been already discussed already. So in early books also he has discussed it, and even in this Mundaka Upanishad also he has discussed about it. We'll see that later. Here, the last statement only, how truthfulness is helpful in the material world has been already said. So we discussed that just in a quick manner, that intellectual honesty is what is called as truthfulness at the level of a personality. We have got physical, mental, intellectual personalities. All of them have certain values to be lived, and a value to be lived at intellectual level is called as Satyam. Satyam is the word used at three different levels: at personality level, at the way of life that leads to the reality, and the reality itself. The reality itself is called as Satyam. And in Mundaka Upanishad, we have already come across this chapter 3, section 1, we are doing at present, Mundaka Upanishad. The sixth mantra says, Satyameva jayate na anrutam satyena pantha vitatav devayanaha. So Satyam, Satyena panthaha. So the truth is the goal. Satyena pantha, the path also is of Satyam, the reality. And then there Swamiji has said that even the tiles on the road that makes the road are also of truthfulness. And that is referred here, you will find at the footnote, it is referred on the same page. They refer the discourses of Mundaka Upanishad, mark this section 3, chapter 3, etc. So this Satyameva Jayate Nanrutam, this is the motto of our India, the country, Satyameva Jayate. But the next one is not quoted, Na Anrutam. Falsity never wins. That is not referred, because here the whole statement is Satyameva Jayate Na Anrutam. Without this attachment of Na Anrutam, this Satyameva Jayate does not work. And there are details, explanations, and we have discussed it in details when we went through that mantra 6th mantra, and now we are on some 12th mantra or something. But in that we have discussed in detail, and the same statement is quoted here, which will be covered in the following paragraphs. So here the 6th paragraph, in the 6th paragraph itself, it is quoted like this. It has been discussed, third line of the 6th para, it has been discussed in the Upanishad more than once. According to Rishis, the path to the truth runs through truth and is led by the slabs of truth. Now, Swamiji has made a statement with a slight difference. In the Mundaka Upanishad, he has said truthfulness. He has used the first word goal as truth, then the path of truthfulness and the slabs of truthfulness. So these two words are used as truthfulness. And the last word, the goal, is the truth. Here, all these words are truth only. Therefore, we need to appreciate the shades of meaning as applicable to different levels. So here, the path of truth runs through truth and is led by the slabs of truth. So the path to truth means the goal. The goal to be reached is the truth or reality. Then the path also should be of truth, and the path made up of tiles or slabs, that also should be of truth. It is not that you live the life of untruthfulness, live a life of falsity and reach the reality. It is impossible. If the goal is truth, then the path leading the goal should also be true, and the tiles or the slabs that are made, that makes the path, also should be truth. Now this is another statement for deeper reflection. So here we have to see the three levels of truth. The truth as a goal, truth as the path, and here path we can take it as a way of life. There are two aspects to life, the science of life. One is the way of life, and the other is the view of life. You will find generally in the Western countries, every 10 years or 15 years, there is a new philosophy. And the philosopher will paint the picture of the goal to be reached. And if you go through that, you will find it is perfectly logical. That yes, one must reach this goal, it is worth reaching. But it will lack the technique. How I can reach there? What is the technique or the practice by which I can reach the goal? And if that is not given, then definitely a science without a technique is a mere fable for children to read. Fable is a probable story. All right, they will agree that this is possible. It only says that it is logically true, but it will lack the technique. When technique is not suggested, then it merely becomes the vision of life. And the vision of life can change according to the viewer. It is conditioned by the viewer. Therefore, that vision of life may change, and we find that the philosophy in the West changes every 10 years, 12 years. Somebody comes and he has his own philosophy of life. Likewise. But as against this, if we study the Eastern philosophy in general and that of our Hindu's philosophy, it is not only a way of, it's a vision of life or a view of life, it is a way of life as well. It means that the philosophy describes for us the goal to be reached as truth, and it also describes for us the path which will lead to the goal. There are four paths indicated in general as path of action, path of devotion, and a path of what you can say, yoga, the path of knowledge, etc. The four paths are described in view of the different temperaments of the people, and it covers the entire cross section of humanity. That there is no one who doesn't have any particular practice suitable. He is either of these four, he must be involved in it. This in itself is a deeper thought. So what is here suggested is truth is the goal. Then truth should be the path also, and truth should be also the tiles that make the path. Three levels. Therefore, when we conduct in our life should be truthful, in tune with the truth to be reached. We should never lose sight of that goal in our life and conduct ourselves in harmony with it. That none of our actions, feelings, attitudes, or thoughts should be in opposition to or contrary to the truthfulness. So this is a way of life. Apart from view of life, it is basically a way of life. So the view of life gives you the vision of reality, and when you think over and consider it as logically possible, then you are also given the technique or the path by which you can reach the goal. The paths may be many, but the goal reached by them is one and the same. If the goal is one and then paths are many, because it is only to suit the temperaments of the people or seekers who want to walk the path. And now, from the way of life to reach the goal of truth, tiles also should be made up of the same material of truthfulness. Then it comes to the level of our personalities. In our life, we are living the life at four different levels: physical, mental, intellectual, and spiritual. In all the four levels, there must be an alignment, as we have already said, in general, meaning whatever we think, we should mean it when we talk, and our action or work should reflect that, nothing else. So this kind of perfect alignment is a way of life that we can conduct ourselves. And when you say slabs that will form the path, then slabs are at intellectual level of our personality. It should be living a value of satyam, truthfulness, intellectual honesty, where it doesn't compromise. And the mind also should become obedient to the intellectual understanding and the vision, and tries to execute it at the level of the body and action. So likewise, the physical body doesn't have its independent demands. It is only a tool for us. It is a counter for us to interact with the world. Therefore, the body will go in as per the commands of the mind. But what is important is the mind following sincerely the steps that are taken by the intellect in terms of its determination of the goal or in terms of its decision regarding the present situation. So all these personality level of a given seeker, then at the level of his life, conducting his whole life, whether he's a student, whether he is a earner, earning his livelihood, whether he's a married person or whether he's a middle-aged person, whoever he may be at different stages of life, the way of life that he should follow will be same. Only the values related to the different stages may appear to change, but essentially he will not be compromising anything against the intellectual understanding and conviction. This is very important. Therefore, truthfulness at the level of personalities in terms of its perfect alignment in thought, words, and deeds, one level, this will form a slab. And our every experience, when proves it, then it becomes the slab and a way of our life. We conduct ourselves in the same manner. Whatever we did yesterday, the way we behaved yesterday, the way we conducted ourselves yesterday, same way we will conduct. So this discipline, a life of values, is what is most important. That is the base level where every experience, every day, and every action will form a slab to make the path of truthfulness. And thus, when our entire life is nothing but spelling truthfulness in thought, words, and deeds, then we are preparing a path to reality, to realize the truthfulness or truth. And the goal is also the truth. So here Swamiji has used the word truth in all the three levels. There he has used the word goal as truth, and the path as truthfulness, and the tiles as truthfulness in Mundaka Upanishad. So you can read the commentary on Mundaka Upanishad, that sixth mantra in the first section of third chapter, and you will get further details also, indicative details. Here the same thing is referred. This is how the Mundaka Upanishad is, in a nutshell, talking about the portions or about Brahma Vidya, which is elaborated in Prashna Upanishad. Now even you can see the sixth query here in Prashna Upanishad also is based on Mundaka Upanishad mantras. Now we started Mundaka Upanishad somewhere in September 2015. Mundaka Upanishad. We started Prashna Upanishad 2 months before, July 2015. And we are at the concluding portion of Prashna Upanishad somehow. And Mundaka Upanishad, since it was a Mantra Upanishad, and in a short manner, in a suggestive manner, we needed detailed discussions on that to appreciate the contents. Now here itself is detailing out. Now those two mantras are in the again last section, concluding mantras, almost concluding mantras, where you can say in Mundaka Upanishad also, the first thing is where the illustration is, as the rivers meet the ocean while flowing, yada nadyaschandamana samudre nama rupe vihaya. This is a mantra particular. This is a illustration. And before the illustration, there was a principal idea that was suggested in earlier mantra. So this is, you can see those two mantras somewhere, 9th and 10th mantra of Mundaka Upanishad, second section, concluding, almost concluding mantra, where with this illustration, Nama Rupe Vihaya, as the rivers while flowing, they have their own names: Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, Narmada, Kaveri, Sindhu. They all each having their peculiarities, and even if two rivers come to a confluence, we can still see the color shades difference between two rivers. But once they reach the ocean, they lose their names and forms and merge with the ocean to become the ocean. So this is the idea. This is the illustration given, and you will find it in that mantra 9th or 10th, or something concluding mantras of that. Somewhere I noted that. You'll find it. यदा यथा नद्यः सन्दमानाः समुद्रे संगच्छन्ति नामरूपे विहाय तथा विद्वान् नामरूपात् विमुक्तः परात् परं पुरुषमुपैति दिव्यम्. So the man who has reached the truth is the one who loses his name and form and transcends all the upadhis and becomes one with the truth, the Brahman. So this was the mantra. And before that, Gata Kala Panchadasha Pratiksha Pratishtha. This is the earlier mantra. So mantra number 7 and 8 in Mundaka Upanishad, last section, third chapter, second session. Now we are doing first section and coming to a close of the section. Then we have second section in the third chapter. In that mantra number 7 and 8. So these two mantras, the first one is, so this is the concern of sixth query. On these two mantras is elaborated the sixth query, the basis of that. So this is how we find that in Mantropanishad, as Mundaka Upanishad, we have, in short, in a nutshell, the presentation of the truth and reality, whereas in Prashnopanishad, the same ideas are well elaborated. So these two mantras are elaborated in the sixth query. So we are on the concluding query of the Prashnopanishad and a little behind, one section behind in the Mundaka Upanishad. So we have started almost now 5 years old. So now if the new members online, if they find it a bit difficult, etc., we can't help it. Still, we are trying to cover some preliminary introductory portions along with this. Like I talked to you about the values of life to be lived at physical, mental, and intellectual level, respectively as Brahmacharya, Ahimsa, and Satyam. Here, with reference to this, he has already said that related to the world outside, we have already discussed. No, I have not said that we have already discussed. We have discussed this now also, that this kind of integrity between BMI, body, mind, and intellect, leaving their values of life, and such a person, integrated person, is befriended and invited everywhere. Every company, every organization wants a person with integrity, not the one who will divulge the secrets of the organization. It's a man of integration, man of values, where he is entrusted some responsibility, he will do it, because the boss will then rely on him that he is of this character and he will not compromise on that. So that kind of person is welcome even in the worldly life. Very seldom though we get such person, come across such person, and very seldom the industries also appreciate such a values. So if they can get somebody who will manage to do his job, the boss should not ask, how do you do it? How did you do it? You are doing it. Whatever he wants, he will do it. How he manages to do it, boss will not ask, and they can manage the business. But few industries who are marked for quality, they choose the individuals, train the individuals, or they select those individuals who can serve their purpose. So therefore, here this life of values, mainly these three values in general, and that of Satyam in particular, that forms a tile on the path that leads to the reality or the truth. So this is the almost the last statement in the sixth para. So still there is one more paragraph before we go to the second Brahmana. So we will discuss that next time. So this was in the 6th paragraph. This was the a important statement which was also there in Mundaka Upanishad. The path to truth runs through truth and is led by the slab of truth at every short distance. This was the last statement in the 6th para. We'll discuss the balance next time. Now, in case you have any questions as a result of our discussion, please ask.
की तुम्ही म्हणालात ना की संतांच्या वाङ्मयामध्ये कॉन्शियसनेसचं रिफ्लेक्शन येतं. तर जसं ज्ञानेश्वरी म्हणजे त्यांचं ब्राईटनेस म्हणजे आपण ज्ञानेश्वरी बघितली किंवा दासबोध बघितला तर केवढं ते वाङ्मय अगदी ब्राईट वाटतं. म्हणजे तो कॉन्शियसनेस त्यांच्यात उतरल्यासारखा वाटतो. एवढंच मला म्हणायचंय. बाकी
आरत्यांमध्ये सुद्धा जे वर्णन दागिन्यांचं असतं, ते दागिने चमकतात, तो शाईन आहे, तो कॉन्शियसनेस दाखवणार आहे. एरवी मूर्ती काळी असेल, कुठलीही असेल, पण त्याच्यावरचे दागिने जे आहेत ना, ते त्याच्यावरची दिव्य शोभा, दिसे दिव्य शोभा म्हटलेलं आहे. हे सर्व अलंकार जे आहेत देवाच्या अंगावरचे, ते त्या चैतन्याचं प्रतिनिधित्व करतात. या सर्व जड पदार्थामध्ये ते एकच चेतन आहे, ज्याची चमक आपल्या जडामध्ये सुद्धा दिसते. अशा तऱ्हेचं साधारण वर्णन आहे. तुम्ही म्हणता हा विचाराशी मी पण सहमत आहे. आणि फक्त आपण हा ब्राईटनेस, शाईन, ब्रिलियन्स, इफल्जन्स वगैरे हे शब्द जे आहेत प्रकाशवाचक शब्द आहेत आणि हे शब्द हे त्या चैतन्याचं प्रतिनिधित्व करतात. आणि आरत्यांमध्ये प्रत्येक कुठलीही आरती घ्या किंवा त्याच्यातला एक कडवं तरी त्या दागिन्यांचं वर्णन करणारं असेल आणि त्यामुळे किती ती दिव्य शोभा आली. तिथे दिव्यत्व हे सुद्धा प्रकाश सूचक आहे. तर ही शोभा मध्ये भा म्हणजे परत लाईट आला आणि दिव्यत्वामध्ये पण तेच आलं. तर हा वेगवेगळ्या माध्यमातून ते एकच सत्य हे सुचवलं जातं. आज आपण इथेच थांबूया. यस्य प्रसादादहमेव विष्णुः मय्येव सर्वं परिकल्पितं च इत्थं विजानामि सदात्मरूपं तस्याङ्घ्रिपद्मं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यं. तस्याङ्घ्रिपद्मं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यम्. ॐ श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः. हरि